I'm Claudine Wong with KTVU in the San Francisco Bay Area, and I'm joined now by Jimmy Hu, who's the co-founder of the Asian Leaders Alliance, as well as Mai Lak, who is a creative producer with BayCat. Hi, guys. Thanks so much for joining us.
Hi. Hey, thanks for the invite.
So let's talk about the issues that brought us here for this conversation today, and that's specifically some of the racism and the struggles that we are seeing in the Asian American community, especially during this COVID time and as people try to navigate it. What are you guys seeing in terms of the conversation? Because certainly in the very beginning of when all this is happening in the national conversation, we did see a rise in hate crimes. I know my colleague just did a story on how many more instances we are seeing, and certainly it doesn't seem like that trend is changing. What are you guys seeing in the people that you're talking to in this project? And it's a video we're going to watch in just a moment, but that spurred the idea to say, maybe we need to have another conversation and present what's going on in a different way. And Jimmy, maybe you can just, as part of the Asian Leaders Alliance, what you're seeing.
So just to give a little context with the Asian Leaders Alliance, we're an alliance of Asian ERG leaders from different companies. A lot of them are Fortune 100 companies. And so what kind of spurred this whole, at least on our side, was that we've had some ALA members come up to us and asking, hey, these things are happening within our community. We've heard that this has happened to one of our neighbors or friends. What is Asian Leaders Alliance going to react to, do to this? And for us, it was hearing all these stories that's even affecting those. A lot of our members are professional, white-collar professionals that work at big companies. Even them and their community are being affected. And so these are rising, but it wasn't like this never happened before. It happened more, it's happening now and before, but it seems to be coming up more often, more frequent. And now our community is wondering, how can we respond? How can we bring awareness to what's going on? Because this is affecting all of us.
Yeah, and add to the conversation. And Mai, let's bring you in, because tell me about BayCat. I mean, we have talked about BayCat before in terms of how much you're a part of the community. You work with young people, you make videos. And in terms of when you're looking at this project and this problem, where's the opportunity for BayCat in here?
Well, I think with BayCat producing high quality social justice oriented media, and we're aiming to end racism through storytelling. To be honest, we set out to do a couple of pro bono projects for struggling organizations during this COVID time. I had recently experienced a couple racist acts myself, I think 3 days prior to ALA reaching out to BayCat. So the studio team reached out to me and was like, hey, we have ALA who's interested in making something about, Asian racism during this time. And do you think that you had the bandwidth to take this? And how do you feel about that? And I was like, I would love that. And I think that's when we stepped in and we reached out to Jimmy and the team, and we're like, we would love to be a part of this and partner together and create something beautiful to share stories with people.
And everything is understanding. So before I play this video and so people can watch it, tell me what the purpose of this video is, and just give it a little bit of an introduction.
Go for it, Jimmy.
Awesome. So the purpose of the video is to actually put a face to the stories that are going on. A lot of acts that are happening right now are being written as blog posts or as articles, but it disassociates a person from what's really happening. And so the purpose of this video is to give that face of person being racism towards. And so with this video, we want to put that, shine that light, but we also want to make sure that there is a call to action. So as you'll see a little bit later, it'll be hashtag speak up with ALA. We want people to tell their story, go to our website and see the call to action on how they can help the overall community against racism.
Okay, so let's play this. It's 2 minutes, so I think we can play the whole thing. Let's just let people kind of sit there through it with us, and then we'll talk a little bit more about it here. And I will pull it up, and then turn up the volume for us, and then we can...
Kids would sing this song, Chinese, Japanese, Taiwanese, Korean. When they got to Korean, they would pull their eyelids in opposite directions. In this hierarchy of undesirable Asianness, my Korean face was the most laughable and the most undesirable.
I I remember walking down the hallway as I saw a group of kids walking towards me. They looked straight up at me and called me mulatto. I couldn't help but be upset at the fact that they assumed my race with intention to be hurtful.
He would call me pork fried rice every day in class. Some of the other classmates thought it was funny and would join in. I felt hurt and embarrassed and eventually numb to their harassment.
Ching chong, konnichiwa, Jackie Chan, Jackie Chan. Throughout my life, I've had all of these things shouted at me at one point or another, but I completely normalized this behavior. This was racism.
I was coughing and sneezing due to seasonal allergies, and I noticed that they were whispering to each other. They just assumed that I could have COVID-19 because I am of Asian descent.
One person started to speak very kind of loudly about how the Chinese were responsible for it. I started to feel sadness that people were so misinformed.
To end anti-Asian racism, we need to speak up,
Come together.
Spread cultural awareness
Through understanding each
By
other.
working in community and shared struggle.
Share your experiences.
To celebrating diversity and
exposure and acceptance to
inspire kindness.
For everyone to have their best life.
Okay, fantastic. So let's talk about it in terms of how we have this conversation, because really it can be done in a lot of different ways. And I think tone is an interesting part of that, in terms of the kind of tone that you wanted to have with this. You know, why did you choose the direction you went in?
I would like to go.
So I'm the creative producer on the project, and I wanted to try something different here. It was a pro bono project. We were told that it might have been shared with a lot of ERGs through Jimmy and ALA. So I was like, why don't we try something different here? Because we also want to show the Bay Area and the community in the world that during this time, Baycat Studio is continuing to create. So we've pivoted and tried to find new directions in order to make things while we're still at home. And one of the editor, Jade, she had done a little stop motion thing of her personal life and some Polaroids recently. And so I was like, why don't we play off of that and see if we can do something like that? Maybe get some stories, maybe ask if they can send their picture in and see what we can do with that. I also wanted to do something that I thought anybody could watch. Like I imagined children could watch as well. So I think that's why we kind of went this more playful route.
And I think it's non-confrontational. I mean, I think sometimes, you know, in my experience growing up and living in different parts of the country, a lot of times when someone will say something hurtful, the defense is, oh, you know, I mean, you take it too seriously. You know, I mean, how many Wong jokes have I heard in my life? So many that I can't even count. And a lot of them aren't said with maliciousness. They are said because someone thinks it's funny. Maybe they aren't Asian usually, and they think Wong jokes are hilarious. You know, Claudine went the Wong way, and you know, I mean, it happens all the time. It is, I thought when I was watching it, a way to see maybe a different side of it about how hurtful that was and how it would shape, and the fact that you used schools and you used children in that space. It kind of, in a non-confrontational way, says, you know, maybe the stuff you're saying is more hurtful than you think.
And it has stuck with me till now, you know, mid-30s from elementary school, you know, at this point. So I think it's important to address for sure.
Did you have a hard time trying to find people who wanted to share a story or who had something to say?
Not at all. I think most of my friends were very open to it immediately. So I think it was pretty powerful moment when I cried actually listening to a couple of these testimonials. So
yeah, the difficult thing. Jimmy, in terms of what you were looking for and the message that you were trying to, you know, the response you were trying to give to people saying, well, what is ALA doing about this trend and what we're seeing? how much did this video then, when you saw it, you know, as it came to be, really hit the mark?
I think this hit directly on the mark. One of the things is with ALA is we are mainly targeted towards Asian ERGs of different companies, and try to empower them and get them to collaborate together to be involved in the community. And with the whole anti-racism, anti-Asian racism came up, we wanted to do something more. We wanted to bring more awareness to the greater community. That's why we ended up reaching out to BayCat. And when this piece was done, it was amazing. The amount of responses that we had from those involved, all the stories you got, we've actually gotten a lot more. They were all submitted to us within two and a half days. The whole video was put together, I think, 2.5 weeks. And it actually even pushed us at ALA to try to do more about getting the word out and the story out, because our whole point is to get people to understand the other side, to understand the people behind the stories, to understand that things do affect us even though we may not show it. And I think that's one thing with our the Asian culture is we don't necessarily speak up or say things, but everything affects everyone.
Right, and the conversation is important. I think, are you getting from, so there's two reactions that you get from this, right? The people who watch it, and like I watch it, I'm like, well, that's happened to me. Oh, well, I can relate to that, or that's, and then the other side of it from the people who said, I never even really considered that. You know, the video is speaking to both of them. Who are you hearing, both of you, who are you hearing the most reactions from? The people who are saying, at least this gives me a voice to say this is happening and I need people to know it, or the people who say, you know what, I didn't realize, because there is some corona related comments in there, obviously, with what we are seeing in terms of just the reaction to that and the racism that we have seen coming from it. But there's also just generalized statements in there of, this is our experience and this is what it means to grow up Asian American, you know, in the US.
From my side, I think I've heard actually both. The thing that was very surprising to me was some of my peers, especially those who were not born in the US, but were from studied in the US and ended up staying here after college. The thing that surprised me from them, they were like, oh, I didn't realize that was racism. I thought that was a joke. And it was interesting to kind of see the revelation in their eyes that, oh, because those things has happened, those actually started more harsher comments and stuff that happens in the workspace or in numerous other areas. So I've been hearing both stories, but I've been definitely more pushed, or not necessarily pushed, but more intrigued about hearing how those who never thought it was a negative comment started realizing that it is a negative comment and how it affected their lives so far.
Right. Well, and I think that's right. It's you can see it in the, you know, in a very base level, but you can also see it in the tech world, in people who don't assume that they're doing anything because they don't have a negative intent towards it. They don't assume that what they're saying, because they didn't mean it to be mean, is having that impact. Maya, are you hearing that kind of reaction as well?
Yeah, I agree. I agree with Jimmy, and I think I'm feeling and hearing the same things from both types of spectators. I also think that, like, at some point it's a matter of us speaking up to tell them that's not okay. And I think that's what we're trying to do in this video. And as a kid, you don't know that this isn't right, and they're laughing, maybe you're laughing a little bit, but you know, at some point it's up to us to stand up and step up and kind of speak up about it. So,
and do you think it speaks more to a certain age group? I'm wondering. I mean, we talked about how you're using the situation of children in schools. I find that young people I talk to are very aware of a lot of things in a way that I didn't sense that same awareness when I was growing up among my peers and the people around me. They're just, especially in the Bay Area, maybe there's obviously a large Asian American population here, and there's some more exposure to some of the issues. But are you seeing it speak to one age group or one segment of the population more than others? Or is it kind of a generalized, you know, impact?
I think it's pretty general for me so far. I mean, it hasn't been posted for too long, so we're hoping to kind of continue this reach and spread the word and the love with this. But what about you, Jimmy?
Yeah, I mean, I think similarly, so far from everyone that I've known that watched it and those that I've seen online, it's been generally they've taken it very similarly. I am kind of curious on seeing, because I do know there's a huge generational gap between us and our parents and our grandparents that came to the US in a very, very different ecosystem that's been there back then. It'll be kind of interesting on getting more responses from them and seeing how that reaches out to them. And at the moment, not sure, but I definitely would like to see.
Yeah, so you talked about the call to action. What do you hope happens next for both of you guys? I mean, I imagine, Mai, you have a bunch of projects, and Jimmy, this is a call to action. You want to hear more from people. We want to keep this conversation going. So what's the next step? If this was step one, what's step two?
So based on the, for the video itself, the call to action step two is actually first is share your story. There's a lot of campaigns out there that's currently happening. Wash the hate. Hate is a virus, etc. We want people to continue to share their stories, because sharing your story brings awareness. Bringing awareness makes it shown to people that this is happening more frequently, because not knowing that, not having it brought up, people assume it's not happening, but we know for a fact that it's happening. The next step after that is we actually have call to actions on our website at asianleadersalliance.com. And there are things you could do as individuals, such as we actually have a Slack workspace where you come and talk with other people and create a community of safe spaces for people to talk about what's going on in their feelings and what they're doing to help out. But there's other things like, support your local businesses. If you see, we actually have links to resources where how to step up or help someone that you see is being harassed or and such. So there's a handful of call to actions there. And we're also telling people who are involved at their company to kind of speak up and let their organization know if they're uncomfortable or stuff going on, and seeing how their organization could also help in this bigger picture, because it's not just us individually that has to do stuff. We also have to call our organizations, our the businesses we work for, even the politics and the government, to actually be involved, because at the end of the day, racism is bad. It hurts everyone.
Mm-hmm. It does. It hurts the whole community. Mai, in terms of what projects and I mean, you talked about having an experience, a few days before you put this together. Was this cathartic in a way to say, there's some things we can't stop, but we can certainly change how we respond?
Definitely. I think it was definitely cathartic. It was a therapeutic process for me. I kind of took that, the way I was feeling, and put it towards this project for ALA. I think with BayCat, we want to continue to address immediate challenges of affected communities. I think we want to continue to work with socially, we want to work with more organizations like ALA. We want to spread more awareness with matters like this throughout the community, and take the burden off of the people who are being attacked, and then challenging the larger community to stand up in allyship is what we're trying to do.
Yeah, well, it was certainly a great video. I watched it a couple of times and found myself connecting it in different ways, and really seeing, I think of the kids who are going through it now, and all we have to share in terms of making sure we keep a positive conversation going and reaching people in as many different ways as we possibly can. So Mai Lac, the creative producer of BayCat, and Jimmy Hu, who's the co-founder and president of the Asian Leaders Alliance, I appreciate the conversation. Thanks so much for sharing this project, and we hope it gets a lot of eyes and a lot of hearts to pay attention to its message.
Thank you so much, buddy.
And for more interviews, you can, of course, go to coronavirusnow.com. Thanks so much for joining us.